I often wonder what actually prompted my interest in horror, and how it became such an integral part of my life and career. They say your life experiences can mold you into who you become, both professionally and personally. I believe the moment that changed everything was an experience I had when I was in my late teens. I was around 16 or 17 years old. I'm currently 25, so this happened roughly a decade ago now. Oh, and also, I'm male. This isn't incredibly important, but given the context of the situation, what happened to me more often happens to females, so that's why I'm including it. I grew up in a small village in the south of England. It was completely remote, surrounded by hundreds of fields until they reached the closest town, which was about 20 miles away. Yeah, pretty remote. It was the middle of the week when it happened. My friend, who I'll call Ryan for privacy reasons, and I decided we were going to travel to the abandoned remote house that lay in one of the fields about a mile out of the village. Now, this house was creepy, but me and Ryan had been there so many times, normally during the night, that the creaks and shadows in the place didn't frighten us one bit anymore. There was nothing special about this place at all. It was literally just an abandoned house, shrouded in overgrown grass and trees. Easy to miss if you didn't know where you were going. We had no idea who had lived there in the past. But it had clearly been abandoned many years ago. Ryan and I grabbed a couple of deck chairs and some beers out of our parents' fridges, and met at the entrance to the field before taking our first steps into what seemed like endless patches of dirt, wheat and grass. It took us roughly 15 minutes to reach the house, and when we did our usual setup. We walked up the broken staircase to the first floor, second floor, if you're American, and set up the deck chairs in the corner of the room that we always chose. The wall next to that corner was heavily damaged. There were large holes in it, allowing you to see in and out of the structure. We made sure never to lean directly on it, for fear that it might collapse entirely. Ryan always brought a speaker and a large flashlight, so he set that up too, and within minutes we were listening to music and chatting about college, jobs, girls. Everything two teenage boys like to discuss. We did this roughly every 2 weeks or so. It wasn't a scheduled event, more like a random "do you want to go to the house?" message at 8 p.m. from one of us to the other, and 9 times out of 10, we'd go. We normally only stayed for around 4 hours, max, anyway. We'd been at the house for about 2.5 hours when Ryan suddenly pressed stop on the speaker, turned off the flashlight, and froze. I asked him what was wrong, and he just put his finger to his lips. Ryan didn't scare easily. He's actually in the military now, so I was slightly on edge when this happened. After a few seconds of pure darkness and silence, I heard it. It sounded like somebody was moving through the thick, overgrown grass towards the house. Despite the darkness, we could just make out each other's expressions. Ryan and I exchanged a look as if to say, "Should we get the hell out of here?" But we didn't move. We just listened as the sound gradually came to a stop. And it didn't stop just anywhere. It stopped maybe a few feet away, below us. Ryan gently moved to the wall and looked through one of the holes. After a few seconds, he turned to face me and shook his head. It was my turn now. I looked through, and with a sense of adrenaline and newfound courage building, I went to take the flashlight from Ryan's hand. He wasn't expecting me to grab it, so instead of taking it, I knocked it out of his hand. It landed on the ground in front of us. And of all the things that could have happened, the worst one did. The flashlight turned on. I snatched at it, shining it up so I could see the buttons. This was a heavy-duty, military-style flashlight, the kind that could illuminate for literal miles if it wanted to. It wasn't on that setting, but it might as well have been. Realizing that our position had been given away, I instinctively flashed the light out of one of the holes towards where we last heard the movement. My heart has never raced so quickly in all my life. Hiding in the long grass was a person. The face was covered, except for the eyes. I couldn't make out any distinct details, but one thing I did see scared me half to death. This person wasn't standing in the field. They were lying in it. I quickly realized why Ryan hadn't seen them. As the flashlight made contact with the person, they turned and bolted for the field. Ryan had seen it too through another hole and had already started packing the chairs and gathering the other supplies. we didn't say anything to each other in that house. We just left the way we came in. Unfortunately, that way was through the long grass the person had been hiding in. If we hadn't seen them run off, we might have had to leave another way. We sprinted almost the entire way back. It wasn't until we saw the lights of some village houses that we finally stopped running. Ryan and I began speculating. This had been, and still is, the most scared I had ever seen my friend. We wondered why they had been lying there and what they had planned to do if they'd caught us. We both got shivers just thinking about it and decided we were never going back there again. It just wasn't worth it. I wish I could tell you that was the end of the story, but there are 2 more parts yet to be told. I didn't mention this before, but when I saw this person stand and run, I'd been amazed at their height. It was clearly a man, it had to be. He was around 6.5 feet tall, I'm 6, and so is Ryan, for context, and he was stocky. The height was one of the reasons we were so scared. This person could easily have overpowered both of us. A week later, I was shopping with my mom. Remember that town 20 miles away I talked about? That was the biggest supermarket near us, and my parents regularly went there to shop. I hadn't mentioned any of what happened to my parents. They didn't approve of us going there, citing it as a dangerous building that could collapse at any second, which, on reflection, they were clearly right about. My mom was looking at the large drinks packs in the final aisle of the store. I had a sudden urge to pee, so I told her I'd go to the store restroom and be back in about 5 minutes. She said okay. And I left. As I walked to the restroom, I remembered that person and shivered instinctively. As I entered the men's, I thought about what they were doing out there. The village was the closest location for miles. Did they live there? They had to. If they'd lived in the house, that wouldn't have been the first time Ryan and I had seen them. Thoughts swirled in my mind as I entered the cubicle. I'm not kidding when I say that almost immediately after I closed the cubicle door, the main door into the men's restroom opened. This freaked me out, but I just assumed it was weird timing. As I undid my belt, I waited for the sound of the men's restroom door to shut. But it never did. It was as if somebody was holding it open. This wasn't a silent closing door either. It made a loud sound when it shut, as I'd found out mere seconds before. Now I was really freaked out. And my mind began to piece things together. Had this person followed me that night? It wouldn't be hard, given that Ryan and I had walked straight back to our houses. That person didn't need to be a genius to figure out that we lived there. If only to cement these anxiety-inducing thoughts, the thing that happened next scared me more than the first time I saw this person. I heard a voice coming from the small block between the store and the men's. You know the one, the space where you decide which room to enter, men's, women's, or disabled. Normally, the voice came from a man who clearly wanted to enter the restroom. You alright, mate? Hey, what's going on? Almost immediately, I heard a figure moving fast, followed by a groaning sound from the man who'd spoken. Oi, watch it. Then, slowly under his breath. That guy was wearing a bloody mask. I froze. Hey, is anyone in here? He's gone now, don't worry, mate. You can come out. My hands were completely shaking, but I managed to do my belt back up and exited the cubicle. My bladder could wait. When the man saw me, his eyes widened. He told me exactly what had happened. He'd been standing there, hand on the door, waiting. He could only see the back of him as he approached, and when he asked if he was all right, the man turned to face him. That's when he saw the mask. It was covering everything apart from his eyes. He had bolted out, shoving past the man in the process. Hence the, "Oi." We had a brief conversation, where I explained what had happened at the abandoned house and how Ryan and I had been terrified. The man told me he was surprised when I stepped out. Given how young I was. He thought he'd just caught a drug deal gone wrong or something like that. He wasn't expecting to see a teenager exit the stall. After that, I thanked the man and told my mum and dad everything. They called the police, who assured us they'd find this guy. CCTV had caught him outside the store, but once he was out of sight, they lost track. The town was small, so CCTV wasn't everywhere. The main theory was that the man was homeless, and Ryan and I had just so happened to go to the house not long after he decided to make it his own home. This had prompted him to make sure we never went back by threatening us. We'd just been unlucky, but something didn't add up. If he was homeless, how the hell did he manage to follow me and my mum 20 miles to that store? There was no footage of him in a car. The only footage outside the store showed him walking down the road towards it on foot. This confused not only me, my family and Ryan, but also the officers. They speculated that he might have grabbed a lift with somebody else and left not long before entering the store. Worse, he could have stolen a car. Each was a possibility. The man was huge. Definitely intimidating, so after all of this, you're probably thinking, how unsatisfying is that? Just a homeless man who wanted to make sure we never returned to his house. Well, the police monitored the house, and despite having officers there for around a month, the man was never seen by them. Ryan was never directly approached either. Although, he was on high alert, fearing that he might be cornered like I was, only without an upstanding citizen to help. I'll end this story by telling you one final event that happened. When I was 19, I was accepted into my chosen university to study literature, which was great. I was finally leaving home and would have the sense of independence I'd been craving at that age. Weirdly, when I opened the acceptance letter, it had been ripped in half. Luckily, I received an email too, so I was able to read the whole thing. One day, about a week before I left, the doorbell rang. I answered to see the letterbox in the door was open, but no letters were on the floor. Instead, they were on the outside of the door, like someone had posted them from the inside. I found this strange, but opened the door nonetheless. One thing I've always noticed is that we normally have the same two postmen in the village. They don't live here, but they always cover our route. I looked up to see this postman was a different person. Not only that, but he was waiting in his car on the road outside my house. He was also wearing a low cap, so I couldn't see his face. I frowned as I saw the man waving a letter outside the open car window. "Sorry, I forgot to give you this one. Can you come get it? Knees are sore." The way the man said this almost sounded rehearsed. I walked up slowly and took the letter from him. He was wearing black gloves. Thick ones, too, definitely not part of the uniform. Almost immediately after I took the letter, I caught him looking at me. As I did, his gaze dropped instantly. But it was too late. I'd already seen the man's eyes. And my God! They had the strangest expression I'd ever seen in a stranger's eyes. It could only be described as a longing one, an expression of desire or warmth. The only thing I could compare it to is the look a mother gives when she hasn't seen her child in a while, that initial look of love. You might think I'm overreacting, but at first I felt incredibly unsettled. After he drove away, I thought nothing of it, not until I opened the letter. It had no Royal Mail stamp on it. No return address, and no posted address. Just a plain piece of paper. Inside, it read, "I missed you. Don't go." That was it. It had been at least a couple of years since the first event, but it had stuck with me all my life. When I read that letter, the pieces clicked. That man had given me the letter. That man had ripped my acceptance letter in half. That man with the longing eyes. I did call the police after that, and they found out that the postman who normally did the run on that day had disappeared around 2 weeks earlier. The letter showed no trace of DNA. The man's gloves had probably made sure of that. Since then, I've never seen him again. Probably because I live on the other side of the country now. This experience was definitely a creepy one, but it also helped shape my interest in the subject of horror. It inspired some of my writing, and even some of my films. The strangest thing of all for me was that Ryan was never contacted by him, this man. He only wanted me, and I don't know why.